Hey there and welcome to Plants vs. Germans. If you're new here, I'm standing in my farmer's garden here, and today's video is gonna be about tomatoes. And we have tomatoes in two different spots. One is right here in our farmer's garden, and the other spot is in our front lawn or front garden. This year around we mixed stuff up. Last year we had our tomatoes in this tomato house, but we decided to grow some cucumbers in there, and we are keeping our tomatoes outside this year. And in this spot they're kind of shaded from this huge walnut tree, so it acts as a natural roof, keeps a bit of the rain from the tomatoes or off the tomatoes, but not so much right here. And it's going to be interesting how it's going to turn out, if we can harvest our lot, or if it's actually possible to grow some varieties outside. And that's what we're going to experiment with this year. So what we also did this year is we have 40 different varieties, and of each variety we have around 2 tomato plants. Here's a really neat looking one. It's called the Reisetomate, and it's just like a cluster of different tomatoes all in one tomato. And we're really interested to see how this one turns out. Grows kind of funny. It has like a cluster right here where the tomatoes are growing, and out of like this whole cluster, one small stem starts going up again. I'm happy about that because I was scared that it's going to be done after just those few tomatoes, but it looks like it's branching out a bit more. As you can tell, we mulched the tomatoes this year with straw. It helped quite a bit because we had hardly any rainfall this year. It only started raining like 1 or 2 weeks ago, and we didn't have to water those plants outside, and they continue to grow nicely out here. We also had to improvise a bit with the trellis here. Those wood pieces were in before. We grew beans here last year. We didn't want to take them out, leave them as is, and I sprung some new rope along here. And since we have 3 rows of tomatoes, I had to spin some rope in the middle here, so the tomatoes in the middle are able to crawl their way up. In the farmer's garden we planted tomatoes from this bed to this bed. It's a pretty long one, almost till a fence back there, and it goes around the corner here too. And I'm not sure about the exact number, but I think those are like around 30 to 40 tomato plants, and almost all of them are different varieties. So I'll show you some interesting plants, show you how good they've grown already. Some of them already have tomatoes on them, and I'll blend in the types, since it's hard for me to tell, except for the Reisetomate, for example, because it's so unique looking. I'm really looking forward to this tomato too. It's called the Johannisbeertomate, and as you can see, there are already quite a few tomatoes here. And what's funny about this one is that it produced more and more flowers. Right here sit about, in the end it's probably going to be like 40-50 tomatoes, and it's growing a lot of fruit, or it's producing a lot of fruit. If we go up here you can see tomatoes sitting everywhere, and it's just branching out like crazy. At first we cut it back a bit. We took out all the unnecessary plant parts, but it's been just branching like crazy. We said we're just going to let it branch and see how much fruit it's going to produce, and it's growing nicely. I have a few onions still here that are blooming, quite attractive to the pollinators. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how many fruit one plant can produce. But as you could tell, the tomatoes are quite small, and they're not going to get any bigger than that, since it's typed as a berry tomato. So No big ones, but for a snack it should be fine. So this is also a very funny looking tomato. It has kind of a neck here, almost looks like a pear, which is probably in its name too. I'll put the name down low. It also produces fairly small fruit, so I think they're not going to grow any bigger than this, maybe just a tad bigger, but all the fruit that are on this tomato right now are quite small. But I think I have the same variety in our front garden. I might be able to show it to you later. We also have some striped tomatoes down back here. This could be green zebra. I'm not 100% sure. It's hard for me to reach back here because of all the other plants that are in the way. But they're a bit bigger and have this green striping. And it's going to be interesting if they start to discolor soon or get a different color, or if they're really the green zebra and stay like that. I'll probably know when I'll figure it out and put the variety down low. Also have some quite big varieties, such as this tomato plant, that already produce quite big fruit, and quite a few of them. They're probably going to get way bigger than that. And I don't think they're going to stay green. I think they're going to turn red at some point or yellow. But it's going to be interesting to see how fast they are growing now. I'm actually quite interested in this variety. That's the San Marzano, and it's not as big yet as the other tomato plants here. It's been kept there underneath the walnut tree in the shade, and didn't get enough sunlight yet, so I hope it's going to grow nicely soon. Still already have a few potatoes on there. They're going to be a bit bigger, obviously, and it is hailed as one of the top varieties that you can get here. So I'm really interested to see how many fruits they're going to produce, or this plant is going to produce, and how the fruits taste. So here we have another cherry tomato, or cherry style tomato, and which is quite nice. It grows fairly symmetrical and looks really beautiful. The fruit have a perfect size for eating, and I think they're going to turn red too. And it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to produce more fruit up here, where I have only two, I think. So here you can see them a bit better. One of them already gets like a bit of discoloration. I think it's a bit of a disease. I'll let it grow out. Maybe it's still going to turn out fine. And I think I broke off the stem as I was setting up the rope or the trellis here for this plant, unfortunately, but it happens. So right here is another interesting tomato because it has a little bump at its end. It looks quite funny, and a few tomatoes aren't on here already, but I think it's going to produce way more, as you can see, going all the way back here. And up here we have a couple more flowers, and here too, so I think this one's going to produce quite a bit of tomatoes. So right here we have another pear-shaped tomato. As you can see, it's already turning purple, so it's a purple variety, and also has this kind of neck up top here, but it's already looking good, and it's going to produce more and more fruit. This one is just growing along this wooden trellis here, but it's growing nicely and has a lot of flowers even on top here. So that's going to be it from the farmer's garden here, and now I'll wander over to the front garden to show you the other tomato plants that we're growing there. So here we are in the front garden, where we have our no-dig beds right next to our horses, as you can see, and we also build a trellis here. We put some wood here to support the fence. It's like a fence they use for keeping wild animals out, and we lifted it up a bit from the ground here, so we have a bit of space from the soil to the fence. And for the tomatoes, as you can see here, we had a bit of rope It's hard to see here, but we tied it to the start of the fence here down to the stem and let it grow up, or spiraled it up. So the plants were kind of forced to grow to the fence, and starting here we just take the branches and put them through the fence manually, so the fence supports the plant. And this type, you already seen it, it's the Johannisbeer tomate. The one growing here is a bit smaller, but it's also branching out quite nicely and bears a lot of flowers and already a lot of fruit. Right here, those small fruits looking nice. This again is the Reisetomate, and it's not that big yet either, so this is the main stem part that has to go up here in the end, but it's so thin that I don't want to twist it around the rope yet. But the fruit are looking nice, and for a second there I thought that it doesn't have any parts where it grows again, but luckily it had like one branch left that's able to grow further. So here we have another striped variety, but I don't think this is a green zebra since it's already too big. This must be a different kind. It has a few on there too that are not as big yet. The plant itself is going nicely, already fairly high up, and it's getting more and more flowers here that are ready to bloom. It's going to be interesting for me too to check up on all the types, since I don't know them by heart right now, but when the fruit is starting to ripen, I think it's going to be easier to tell them all apart. So right here we have another purple variety, this time around not one of those pear-shaped ones, but a different one. So it's a bit bigger, doesn't have that neck, it looks like a regular big tomato, and it's already starting to turn violet or purple. And I think it's not going to grow that much more. I think it's probably going to stay this size, maybe grow a bit bigger, but mainly that's probably the size that we're going to get. So this big tomato that you see here, that's definitely a type that I'm really excited about, and that's a beefsteak. So I've never grown this type. It's going to be really, really big, and I'm really interested to see how good this is going to taste and how many fruit it's going to produce, and I really want to slap it on some burgers. So this is again the beefsteak from up top, and right next to it we have another striped variety. Here it's a bit, yeah, now it's focusing. You can see it's similar to the one that I showed you before. This could be a green zebra, I'm not 100% sure, but I'll find out later. And right next to it is going to be another interesting tomato, especially shape-wise. It looks more like an egg here, and it looks like it's turning yellow already. So maybe this is a yellow variety, probably something like a lemon tomato, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's looking quite good and healthy, and it's growing nicely, and already it looks like it's going to produce way more fruit. So this tall or big tomato here is also another funny looking one. Also has pear-shaped tomatoes, although the neck is not as thin as from the other tomatoes. Here a bit more, and this one also already produces a lot of fruit and produces more and more flowers. It has like around 10 to 20 fruits sitting on one branch here, so we're gonna harvest a couple of tomatoes from this plant. So this tomato here is even funnier looking than the other one that looked like an egg. Almost looked like a paprika or a chili. Also has some striping there, and has quite a few tomatoes sitting here already, and back here too. That's a bit hard to tell here. And up top we have a couple more flowers, so it's going at it, and this is going to be really interesting to see what color they'll get and if they grow any bigger or stay like that. As you can see, the tomatoes on this side are quite taller than the ones on the other side here. They're along the other fence part here, because we put these there like I think 2 weeks earlier than the other ones. So the ones back there still have a bit to catch up to, but they started to grow quite fast now as soon as they settled in, and are already blooming and producing fruit too. So right here we have the excess tomatoes that we grew from seeds but didn't have any place or any spot yet where we were able to fit them in. And those are quite a few again. Those are like, I think, at least 30 plants in this multi-tray, maybe even 40, if not more. And I'm trying to look for a spot where I can fit them in. They're not that big yet, right? They're growing quite thin because they're just clumped together, but I don't want to throw them away. And those are basically the same types that we have in our beds already, but the more the merrier. And if we can find place for them, then I'll be happy to just plant them. This is going to be it for today from our tomatoes, and I'll be happy to give you an update on when the next ones are starting to ripen and we can finally harvest. And I'll show you the different colors, the different type of tomatoes that we're growing here soon again. So if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and maybe even subscribe. See you next time.